Good day to everyone who's tuning into this episode of Hiscurious. Today we will explore the Rwandan Genocide and the UN's deplorable failure, along with the rest of the Western world, in intervening and preventing one of the most disturbing genocides of the 20th century. To properly understand the genocide and the UN's role in it, it's important to delve into the history of Rwanda and how the past crafted the perfect environment for one of humanity's worst acts of senseless violence: Rwanda's colonial history. Rwanda, prior to its independence, has a detailed colonial history with huge influences from Germany, Belgium, and France. Rwanda was colonized by Germany in 1884, with the Tutsi king Musinga being put in charge as a puppet of Germany in 1896. This is because the Tutsi kings traditionally led the people in Rwanda due to their relative wealth. Therefore, it's important to note that the Tutsis were more of a social class than an ethnicity, with the Tutsis commonly being rich and well off, while the Hutu were middle class or poor. And as we know, the rich often rule over the poor. However, after World War I, Rwanda was handed over to the Belgians, who started forcing ID cards onto the Rwandan population in 1935. The ID cards solidified class identity of the Tutsis and Hutus and unshackled the two ethnicities, or rather classes, from each other. The Belgian government put the Tutsis in charge of leadership, which left the Hutu feeling subjugated and utilized with no escape or way to evade prejudice. This seeded the roots for the ethno-nationalist extremism from both the Hutus and the Tutsis. In 1962, on the 1st of July, Belgium allowed Rwanda to claim its independence and freedom. However, this independence quickly saw the first acts of ethnic violence erupt. On Rwanda's Independence Day, Gregory Kayibanda was initiated as the president of Rwanda, a Hutu that wanted to make clear to the Tutsis that the Hutu majority will have power over Rwanda. This led to 20,000 Tutsis being slaughtered in the months following independence. Large amounts of Tutsis fled to neighboring countries such as Congo and Uganda and started to form militias to try and retake their homeland. Over the years following independence, Gregory Kayibanda only became more critical and harsh towards the Tutsi minority, imposing rules and restrictions on the Tutsis from engaging in politics. In 1973, during a military coup, Gregory Kayibanda was disposed of, and Juvenal Habyarimana assumed power in Rwanda. His leadership was slightly more lenient than Kayibanda's towards the Tutsis, but large-scale general distrust was ripe throughout Rwanda in regards to the Tutsi. Habyarimana's rule was relatively peaceful, having to deal occasionally with the FPR, also known as the RPF, a Tutsi militia that would perform raids throughout Rwanda to liberate the Tutsis. In 1993, Habyarimana authorized the Arusha Accords that created some sort of peace between the FPR and the Hutus. However, a year after the Arusha Accords, records indicate large-scale import of machetes under the Habyarimana government. This would not go recognized by the UN, despite being reported as suspicious. Shortly after the reports of weapon stockpiles, Habyarimana was assassinated when his private jet was shot down. The initiation of the Rwandan Genocide. Before we go further into the start of the Rwandan Genocide, it's important to at least note that radios and village elders were all promoting strong and radical stances against the Tutsi.
Dimanche 19 juin 1994, et il est 16h22 à Kigali, dans le blindé de la SLM. Avis à tous les Guinéens qui nous écoutent. Oui, à tous les Guinéens qui nous écoutent. Le Rwanda appartient à ceux qui le défendent vraiment. Et vous, les Guinéens, vous n'êtes pas des Rwandais.
With conditions like these, the assassination of Habyarimana was sure to instigate havoc across Rwanda, with both the Hutu and RPF seeing this as a chance to take control over Rwanda. Surprisingly, an interesting detail about Habyarimana's assassination on April 6, 1994, is the surface-to-air missile used to bring down the aircraft. The SAM was French-made, showing some indication of French involvement in escalating the tense situation in Rwanda. On the same day as Habyarimana's assassination, the killings began, with the radio calling on the people to chop the tall trees and exterminate the cockroaches. The Interahamwe quickly formed and started to use machetes to butcher down any moderate Hutus and Tutsis. The day following Habyarimana's assassination, Habyarimana's wife wanted to call for de-escalation on the radio. However, Hutu extremists refused to allow this, leading Habyarimana's wife along with 15 UN peacekeepers to be captured. The small escorting group that had been captured consisted of 5 Ghanaians and 10 Belgians. The 5 Ghanaians were released, but the Interahamwe murdered 10 Belgians as a strong signal to the UN to get out, highlighting one of the UN's most critical failures. The 10 murdered peacekeepers led to France and Belgium pulling out the majority of their UN peacekeeping force in Rwanda. This pullout saw over 2,250 UN peacekeepers leave Rwanda, right as the genocide commenced. This action was enforced and even supported by the UN through their inaction to Romeo Dallaire's urgent requests for more troops and assistance in preventing the genocide from happening. Romeo Dallaire was left with 250 UN peacekeepers and poised with the task of preventing one of the fastest and most extreme genocides in recent history. Despite urgent cries for help, as the casualty numbers of the genocide quickly raced towards 1 million, the UN refused to aid Romeo and provide relief, with chief members of the UN such as the US refusing to call the unfolding actions in Rwanda a genocide up until the time the RPF rolled into Rwanda and put an end to the genocide. However, prior to the RPF ending the genocide, the UN had another critical failing point, preventing Operation Turquoise from being conducted, a French mission to support the Hutu and Interahamwe, as the RPF was falsely considered to be the one committing genocide. The UN failed to condemn France's support for the Hutu, and in further reports referred to the French operation as unfortunate. Like, come on, unfortunate? Really? Anyway, I digress. The UN, in addition to withdrawing troops, not condemning France's involvement, also shot themselves in the leg with one critical policy. A peacekeeper may only shoot in self-defense. This made it nearly impossible to defend any Tutsis who came to the UN for support, as the UN peacekeepers were not allowed to defend the victims of the genocide. This meant that the UN was absolutely pointless in Rwanda, with no power to stop violence, not enough troops, and an important ally of the UN supporting the genocidal regime that's causing mass suffering. All of these points indicate the UN's massive failure in Rwanda, a feat that will also be reflected later during the Yugoslav wars. The UN, despite its international appearance of being a good guy, carries a lot of guilt and shame on its back, with its failures to prevent or help in Rwanda, Sarajevo, and Ukraine in times of critical danger. With roughly 1.1 million lives lost in Rwanda, it marks one of the UN's greatest failures, all due to bureaucracy, ignorance, and the genuine unwillingness to help in Rwanda. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you support my content, leave a like and subscribe. And remember to leave a comment if you agree or disagree with the UN's involvement in Rwanda. I'll see you on the next one. Ciao.